For those wishing another VCR video, you're in luck. I have a Sony Super VHS machine with a mechanical problem. Hey, it's going to be the standard problem on all these Sony VHS and Super VHS machines, and that's going to be, it's going to be that troublesome blue gear. But this is a real easy way to change it. Check it out. This is a Sony SLVR1000 Super VHS VCR with editing capabilities. This one was sent in from a viewer to be repaired, and he says it won't load the tape. So there's a good chance that the problem with this is going to be the blue loading gear, but we won't know until we get it apart. So let's do that and see whether that's the problem. Yep. The problem is the blue loading gear. Guaranteed. Very, very common problem on these chassis. All the Sonys that use this chassis has this gear that breaks. Just so happens that I have a couple brand new spares. These parts are still available. There seem to be lots of them around when I went down to the parts depot to pick up a couple spares, and actually they're sold by a parts distributor that's actually local to me. One of the few that are still around, but he had a whole bag full of these things. Like, he must have had a bag of 100 of them sitting there. So, very common part, and still readily available as of November 1st, 2018. This part is still readily available. If we look down in the mechanism, though, I see that this is not the only fault, because this gear is also loose. So we got a couple different problems in this thing. I don't know whether someone's got into this unit or whether they just beat the crap out of it when they were shipping it to me. But it looks like there's another gear that's come loose that I'll have to look at. Just going to release the front cover. So that I can take the mechanism apart. I need to get the actual chassis out of the cabinet. So that's done by, we have to unplug a couple plugs down the side here. There's two plugs down the side, and I have to just take the, there's some tape that holds the connectors together. Let's take that off. They put an adhesive tape on here so that the connectors don't come apart during shipping and so forth. So I just have to peel that back so that I can undo the connector. There we go. That one's open. And of course, remove that. Remove that connector. And I will take out some screws that hold the chassis in place. I'm going to lift the cassette basket out as well, just because I have to get at this gear assembly below it to reinstall that gear. So these 4 screws remove the cassette basket. We'll set that out of the way. This is what's happened here, is this is sprung apart. So there's the piece of the broken blue gear right there. So this piece goes back in like this. It's got a photo detector below it here. This is a rotation sensor. So we'll just put that gear back in. I have to lift up the hub. Okay. And then I can put this cover back in place. And this will just snap in place like that. Okay, that part is fixed. Now I got to get the chassis out. So there's a couple screws here that have to come out. Unplug the audio control head, and another screw at the front here. Been a while since I've opened one of these units up. I forget all the screws that have to come out. And the chassis should, I think there's one or two more back here that I gotta take out, and the chassis should lift out. Unplug the full erase head. Oh, one more screw. I thought there was one more back there. It's right there. Now I can lift this out and work on the mechanism away from the rest of the chassis. See, nothing else has to come out but the chassis. Everything just, once you've taken a few of these apart, it becomes quite easy to service them. These ones, the 1000s were actually quite easy to service compared to some of the other ones where you actually had to take a circuit board off from the bottom. Right, which you still do on this, but this one, some of the other ones were a little bit more involved because you had to take the bottom off the cabinet. This one you don't, you just lift the whole chassis out. So there's our new gear that's going to go in. Let's work on the mechanism. I'll bring the camera in a little lower. Make it a little easier to see what I'm doing. So the gear is underneath here on this side of the chassis. We're going to turn it over. I have to remove the circuit board to get to the gear. So to do that, I've got the black arrow mark screws to remove. There's 5 of them. And then I can lift the circuit board out. There's a couple plugs that will unplug from from the mode switch and the loading motor. And one little clip over here. And another plug at the back here. And then the circuit board can be tilted out of the way. Here's our broken gear that needs to be replaced. It's actually really quite easy to change this. And I don't know why so many people get scared of changing this thing, but it's not that difficult. We have to make sure that the alignment, I thought that was a crack there. It's not just a hair. I was thinking for a second this gear has a crack in it, but it's not. It's just a black hair that's on there. Okay, to do this, we make sure that the mechanism is correctly timed, which looks like our timing is good. As the alignment holes are all lining up, you can see straight clear through. You can see the two cogs here through the alignment holes here on this gear, and you can see right through the middle of this gear here. You can see the slide assembly below it, so the alignment of the mechanism is good. So I just need to take out the 3 cut washers. Actually, they're not cut washers. There's no cut to them at all. We still call them cut washers. Remove the bracket. Okay. Now I can do this without affecting the timing. Just make sure I hold this in place when I remove the gear. Take off the main cam gear, and here's our loading gears here. And I can just turn these to get them out of the way. I gotta remove. So I actually have to move this guide up to clear the slide, main slide. That way I can lift the gear out of the way. I don't have to take it off, I just have to lift it up enough so that I can remove this cut washer on the bad gear and lift the bad gear out of the way as well. So I can, if I want to lift this whole guide out, I could take off the cut washer here, but I really don't need to. I can lift this up just enough that I can get the old gear out. And the old gear will come out. I'm going to remove this guide here. Remove this cut washer. And this guide will drop through when I do this. But that's okay, we'll just put it back on when we're done. That'll let this arm lift off. And there's the gear that I need to change. And I just have to turn it so that I can remove it. I get my new gear in place. I'm going to put the spring assembly onto the new gear. The spring fits through like that. Okay, and then I'm going to turn the new arm on. I gotta catch the spring here. This side of the spring has to be caught in behind this cog. So I'm going to place the new gear on to catch the spring behind the cog, and then I'm going to turn it to put tension onto it until the gear will drop into place like that. And now the gear is in place and it's got its required tension on like that. Okay, that's how the gear has to sit. Now I can take the gear, I can put the gear back on. Oops. Now take the gear and put it back on. It might help if I put it on the right way. It goes on this way. It won't fit the other way, by the way. It goes on like that with the arm side down. And then we take the other gear and put it over top of its post. We want to get our alignment on here, which is not critical at this point, but we're going to line it up like for these 2 holes here. But I just want to get the guide back in place so I can hold the guide up from the other side, which is still sitting in the chassis. Place the pin over there and then put my cut washer back on. That'll retain that gear. Now, as far as my alignment goes, these 2 holes here are going to line up, which they are not right now. So we're going to go one more cog over. I think that's it. Got to tilt so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. That looks like it. And then if I pull the guides back all the way, when I pull the guide back, I actually have to make sure that I pull in this brake arm here, which is this lever here. If I pull this lever back in, that way the guides can come all the way back down, lock into place. What I want to see is I want to see that the alignment is correct. And how I can see that is these alignment holes here. You'll see that if I get the camera in, zoomed in a bit, you guys have a perfect bird's eye view from there. Okay, here's our alignment holes. One is here, and it lines up with the hole directly below the chassis. The other one is over here, and it lines up with the hole directly below the chassis. So that is fully retracted. Our alignment is good. Now remember, I said the other alignment holes are not going to move because I haven't moved the slide. Here's our alignment holes here. You'll see that there's one here, and you can see the hole directly below it in the chassis. There's another one over here between this gear and the slide plate is lined up, and there's an arrow that points between these two here on these two gears. So our alignment is good. Now we take the main cam gear and pull these guides back, take our cam gear, drop our cam gear down. Again, there's holes here. You can see that these are in place because you can see the hole below the chassis. You see there's one hole, there's the other hole there, and there's the third alignment holes over here. But those are the two you're looking at there, as well as this one over here will line up with that hole there. We take the main cam gear, hold the cam gear in place, drop the cam gear on, and the holes are going to line up so that we can see our two cogs below here, and our alignment hole over there. Just have to move this piece over slightly to get it to lock in place, and like that. Okay, now you can see that this cog is visible, as is this one and this one here, and this alignment hole you can see through the hole below the chassis. The gear is now lined up. Now we take the retainer, we put the retainer back on just like that, and we can put our cut washers back on. Oh, I mixed them up here. This is not a cut washer. This is this one. I got the wrong one on there, so I'm just going to pop that one off. Pop the other one back on. That's okay, it's easy enough to do. That one goes on there, like that. And this other one goes back on here. And of course, his last cut washer goes on here. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to drop in there. Let's get it out. There. So that's the mechanism back together. If I were to operate this, which I can do by turning the gear here, or I could put a low voltage power source to the motor, but if I turn the gear like this by hand, what we will see happen is I can walk the mechanism through its complete loading process. You'll see here as the main cam gear rotates into position, it will then pick up the first cog of the loading gear and put the loading mechanism through its operation. And now you can see that the two loading gears are turning, pushing the two tape guides into the loaded position. As you can see, the loading mechanism now has finished its loading cycle as far as pushing the guides up. As I continue to turn the loading motor, it will complete the loading cycle of moving down the pinch roller into position, and all the guides are now in place for operation. The brakes have been released and so forth. So that part is now complete. If I want to retract this, I can do it by power, or I can do it by hand. But there, it's completely loaded now. If I go back the other way, it reverses and the mechanism unloads. Now, I am going to clean the mode switch on this unit just because it's in for service and it needs to be done for sure, because it's old and it's been sitting around for a while. So make sure that our alignment is in the stop position by making sure that all of our alignment holes are correct. And then I'm going to remove the belt. I'm going to release this screw here. So I'm going to release this screw so I can give myself some slack to remove the toothed belt. Then I can take out the mode switch here. Pull the mode switch out. Again, the mode switch has got an alignment hole that lines up with another little arrow on the edge of this gear here, and of course the main little arrow points at the dot on the side here when you're in the rest position. To open the mode switch up, just squeeze down on the little pins here, and the mode switch will pop apart, and there we can see the gunge and stuff that's inside. We're going to get some cleaner. In this case, I'm going to use Deoxit D100 full strength cleaner in the single drop applicator, and we'll get a cotton swab and we'll wipe out the contacts, clean this up. I know there's going to be doubters that doubt how good this stuff works, but I think that answers your question. Deoxit D100 really works well at cleaning up oxidation. Clean off the other contacts here as well. I'm going to put a bit onto the contacts here, leave some behind as a lubricant. Leave a thin coat there as a lubricant, and we'll close it up. Spin the switch a bit, and I'll also clean up the contacts at the back here. So we'll put some Deoxit onto these contacts at the back, and we'll polish them up as well. I think you can see the oxidation that's coming off these. Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, just a little better than they were to start with. And you can see one side of this is what came off the switch. The other side of it is what came off the contacts at the back. So a lot of oxidation that was cleaned up on this one. Like on all of them. Okay, we're going to take our little timing mark and point it back towards the timing mark there. And then that puts our little dot right there, which is going to line up with the other gear. When I drop it back in place, we release this catch, which allows the mode switch to drop into place. Put the screws back in. Place the belt back on. This spring here is used as a tensioner, although we're going to tighten down this screw once it's in place. But this is just this spring. The only reason the spring is actually here is to put tension on here to begin with. Because once the screw is tightened down, this isn't going to move anyway. So this spring here really doesn't have much of a job other than to put the initial tension on the belt when you first put the belt on. Okay, that's the mechanism there. That part's fixed. We're going to take the circuit board. These are our tape end sensors here and our tape end sensor light source, and they go down through the holes here in the chassis on either side and in the middle. So just drop those down and then put the plugs in for the motor, mode switch, and loading motor, the capstan motor, load switch, and loading motor. And then we can put the 5 screws back in, and then it's time to put the chassis, or put the mechanism back into the main chassis, put the unit together and test it. And then this unit will go back into the mail and spend the next few days heading home. Of course, this is the unit that was left sitting at my front door. Make sure these wires are dressed out of the way so that they're not going to touch the spinning head drum. Okay, time to get the chassis and put the unit back together. Chassis just drops in place. Like that. I have to get this tab out of the way. There we go. Of course, this screw here is the ground. That's a ground screw just to ground the head preamp to the chassis itself. It's almost ready for testing. It's got to put the front panel back on, find a power cord for it, and then it's ready to test. Here's the front panel. Front panel's on. Plug the connector in down here. And find a power cord and we'll test this thing out. Unit powered up. First tape into it. And playback. This is I think this is a Super VHS deck tape. Yeah, this is a Super VHS recording of the movie Under Siege. As you can see, it's Super VHS. These are great machines. The picture quality off this is excellent. This would have been recorded off of a Laserdisc. I can't obviously show this for more than a few seconds, so I'm going to put it back onto here. This was Under Siege 2, and it would have been recorded off of a Laserdisc, I'm pretty sure. Because that's what I used to do. Is I used to rent movies on Laserdisc and then record them on Super VHS. And then I ended up getting a Laserdisc type quality picture on Super VHS tape. This tape I've had for years and years, and this is not even a real Super VHS tape. This is a quasi Super VHS tape. I used to do the same thing that everybody else did back in the day. I just drilled the little hole in the bottom, which told a Super VHS machine that it was a Super VHS tape, and recorded in Super VHS. A real Super VHS tape, of course, did a better job. I have a real one here as well. Because, see, that's the way we used to look. We used to do that all the time with our tapes. Drill holes in regular tapes, because these, of course, tapes were considerably more expensive. And there's the index hole right there. So this one's got 3 movies on it. Oh, this is cool. See, it got some stuff here. This has got 3 movies on in 6-hour mode. It's got the movie Presumed Innocent, the movie Problem Child, the movie about pirate radio, Pump Up the Volume. But I see that I've got a Jean-Michel Jarre concert recorded on here as well. That would have been probably on PBS or something. So this tape's in the EP speed. Let's see how this one looks. In the EP speed, which was still very good. I'm going to scroll ahead and see which concert this one is that's recorded, because he did a few of them back in the 80s. I don't know which one this is. It's been so long that I haven't seen this. I'm kind of curious to see which concert this is that Jean-Michel Jarre played, and I recorded it off TV. I can probably show the credits without worrying about getting a copyright match, but we'll just scroll ahead here past that. What is this? Is this the show here? Ah, it's The Rendezvous, Houston. This was when he played in Houston. Cool. I don't think I've seen this. I've seen some of his other stuff, but I don't believe I've seen the Houston concert. I would have recorded this off of TV and totally forgot that I had it. Interesting. I may have to sit and watch it.
4 days before the deadline. And I'm quite nervous about a lot of problems, technical problems, political problems, and eventually musical problems.
Channel 2, KPRC-TV, Houston.
Well, if the rain holds off, Houston's annual Rite of Spring should be a very good one. Houston Festival 86 is underway.
This is KHOU-TV, Houston.
Well, Houston's skyline is about to be transformed into a backdrop for the biggest laser light show ever seen in America.
KRIV-TV.
Yes, it was a big deal when he came to town.
Downtown today, setting the stage for Saturday's spectacular show of lights, lasers, fireworks, and music. It's called Rendezvous Houston, City in Concert.
Now, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.
Well, it's being called everything from the show of shows to the biggest concert in history, and officially, it is known as Rendezvous Houston, a laser and light show that's going to use downtown buildings as the stage.
So here they're setting it up for the show. I'll just skip ahead a bit here. We'll take a look at the show. So I'm going to have to sit down and watch this sometime and actually see it, because I recorded it and never got around to watching it. It's one of the hundreds and hundreds of tapes of things that I recorded over the years and never bothered to watch, and I must have. I probably got hundreds of tapes. Oh, what was the year there? Let's just see what year. I think I saw a year come up there. I think there was a date coming up here, maybe not. Oh.
We'll still bring confirmation 1 second.
Anyway, you get the idea. There's the search on this unit. Playing his laser harp. And again, I can't, obviously I can't let that play. I think I'm probably okay when I'm searching. But, that was the show that they did. Interesting. To say I'm gonna have to sit down and watch this before I send this machine back. I actually do have super VHS machines, so I can certainly watch this anytime. It just so happens that this is a tape that was sitting out here in the workshop. So one last thing to do on this before I send this on its way, and that's to give it a cleaning and then put it back together. So we'll go through all the modes here. Here's rewind, play. This machine also had a high-speed rewind. If you hit high-speed rewind, it would actually unload the tape and go into a really fast rewind. So like before, just a piece of writing paper soaked in isopropyl alcohol. Turn the head drum counterclockwise. Clean the head. Looks to be, I don't see much dirt on there. I don't think this machine, from looking at it, it looks pretty clean. I don't think this machine's seen a lot of hours. Clean the control track and audio head, full erase head, tape guides, lower drum. Move the heads out of the way so that I'm not going to touch the heads with the Q-tip while I'm doing this. Yeah, it looks to be clean. Capstan shaft. Turning the thing so I can get the back side of it. Okay. And the pinch roller. Probably get the most dirt on anything is the pinch roller. Rubber tends to oxidize a bit. And of course, the pinch roller was the dirtiest of everything. One last tape to make sure everything's working. Which it is. Auto tracking, there it goes, it's kicked in.
About a mile long, and she's got 800,000 gallons of gasoline.
And everything's good. So that's it. That's how to change the loading gear. I know I've done one of these before. Now you see a second one. It's not that difficult to do. It's a fairly simple job. As I say, the parts themselves are still readily available. I have a good source on parts. If you need parts and you don't feel comfortable ordering them off the internet, I certainly have a local supplier, which I can drive over to and pick up the parts. So if you need loading gear, let me know, because I've got them. Okay, unit is back together, ready to take a long trip back home next week. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you again real soon. Bye for now.